everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and in this video we're going to be going through a solo playthrough of Dead Reckoning. And this game's created by John D. Clair and is being published by AEG. If you haven't checked out my setup video, I'll put a link to that in the top right hand corner of this video. You'll want to check that out if you want a better understanding of how the table in front of us here was set up. Now, the solo variant for Dead Reckoning is essentially playing a two-player game with your opponent being the non-human AI. You'll play your turns using the same rules as you would in a normal game. However, your automated opponent will resolve its turns using its own rules, and it's meant to simulate the type of actions a human player might take. It's also interesting to note that you may increase or decrease the difficulty of your game using the hard or normal sides of some or all of the AI cards. The AI deck is comprised of 18 cards, and as I mentioned at the end of my setup video prior, in this particular video, instead of having 18 AI cards in front of me, I'm going to be having 18 pictures of those cards on my phone. I'll be rolling a d20 to determine which of those AI cards are going to be pulled, and of course if I roll a 19 or 20, I'll just simply re-roll. I'll also be bringing up the AI card on screen so that you guys can actually visually see what the AI card looks like to follow along with its actions. And lastly, the rule of thumb is anytime the AI would have multiple options and the rules do not specify which option it should choose, you get to choose for the AI. In Dead Reckoning, you are the commander of a privateer vessel ready to set forth in uncharted waters. Explore unknown islands, gaining influence and establishing outposts, hunting for treasure, or just terrorizing the seas. The choice is yours, and each choice will move you towards a series of achievements, and once a player has completed 4 of these, the game end is triggered. And what you're seeing here in front of you at the very top of the harbor board, based on the orientation we currently have it in that gold banner, are the achievements. And I'm going to go through each of these one by one so you can get a better understanding of how we can achieve 4 of these against the AI. So let's talk about the very first achievement here on the far left hand side that looks like a compass, and this compass represents the Explorer achievement, and this one's pretty straightforward. Right underneath of it, it states how many players are playing in a chart and how many different ocean tiles you need to explore in order to gain this achievement. So for 2 players, the very first entry is a ×5, meaning you'll need to place, as denoted by the cube icon, 5 cubes in this space. In other words, you need to explore or reveal 5 ocean tiles in order to gain this achievement. So you'll use cubes from your supply to represent every single time you have explored or revealed a new ocean tile. Once you hit 5, those 5 cubes can come off this track back to your supply, and you can exchange it for an achievement token, and you're 1 of 4 achievements away from triggering the end game. The next achievement here, represented by a barrel with a slash through it and a 12, is simply to return 12 cargo from your ship and or harbor back to the supply to place an achievement marker here. There's no cubes necessary, as you'll be using your ship as well as your actual harbor to consume cargo to get this achievement. The next achievement is the Capitalist achievement, and it even states right on the icon itself 30 gold, and that's exactly how much you need to have in your treasure chest in order to gain this achievement. The next achievement is the Builder achievement. You simply have to have 5 or more buildings, and if you ever have 5 buildings at the same time on islands you control, immediately place an achievement marker here. If later in the game you have fewer than 5 buildings on islands you control, you do not lose this achievement. This next achievement is represented by level 4 cards, and it's called the Expert Sailors achievement. You have to have 3 cards at level 4. The first 2 times you get a card to level 4, place one of your cubes here, and the third time you can then return all the cubes to your supply and place one of your achievement markers here. Next, we have the Elite Vessel achievement. You have to acquire 4 ship upgrades, and as soon as you acquire your 4th upgrade, place an achievement marker here. Remember to count all upgrade tiles on your ship, even ones you've covered over with other tiles. Next, we have the Settler achievement. If you ever have a total of 6 or more permanent cubes across islands, place one of your achievement markers here. Now, some of these ones will be explained in greater detail as we go through gameplay. This achievement, denoted by a ship completely engulfed in flames and sinking, is called the Terror of the Sea. You simply have to sink a ship. The first time you sink another player's ship during the game, place one of your achievement markers here, in this case, the AI ship. And last but not least, we have the legendary achievement, which is to win 4 non-building battles with your ship. The first 3 times you win, you'll go ahead and place a cube here. On the 4th cube placement, take them all back and put an achievement marker here. So that sums up all the achievements, and we know that the actual goal we're going after to win, or at least to trigger the end game, is to get 4 of these achievements, and that's exactly what I'm setting out to do in this playthrough. So without further ado, let's begin a solo playthrough of Dead Reckoning, and the AI is the first player in all cases. So again, I'm going to go ahead, as mentioned, and roll a d20 to determine which card, one of the 18 normal side AI cards, I'm going to be resolving here. So I got myself a 14, and I'm going to tick this back to a 1 to signify we're in round 1. So with the AI card on screen now for you guys to see, you'll notice that it has multiple rows, and there are numbers on the far left-hand column. The only ones we care about currently in terms of the rows we need to resolve for the AI's turn is just the first row, because 1 to 3 represents the turn that we're currently on. So when we're on turn 1 through 3, the top row is the one we'd resolve if we pulled this particular card. If we happen to be on 13 plus in terms of a turn, we would only resolve the row at the very bottom of the card. So we can ignore the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th rows of this card. The only one we're going to focus on is the top. Now we're going to move from left to right and resolve all the actions in order. So the first thing we come across on this card is a flag that sits in that top left-hand quadrant or ocean tile that has a cube in the flag. This icon tells us that the AI is going to move to this particular ocean tile and attempt to influence the island there to its side, to try and take control of this particular island for its own benefit. But ironically, based on its position on the AI card, there isn't anything in that particular space besides open sea. So luckily for us, there's nothing else to resolve with that very first icon. Now, the one thing you're going to notice as I go through the first turn or two with the AI is I'm going to move the ship through the different icons and actions on the AI card. This will just be a little more visual for you guys in terms of where the actual AI is going. However, when you become accustomed to the game as it is written in the rules, there is an orange position, which you can see right now on the AI card, which is the next icon we're going to resolve. That represents the final resting place of where this AI ship will land. So you can subsequently look at this AI card from the get-go in future rounds and just look squarely at that orange space, place the ship there, and then resolve everything on the card left to right. So as I mentioned, the next spot that we need to resolve going left to right on the AI card is the next flag with a cube inside of it, letting us know that if there's an island in that particular space, we need to put some influence on that island. The orange lets us know, as I mentioned, that the ship will find its resting place there and will end its turn in that location. You'll also note that there's a trim border of yellow around that particular space, and that means that the AI will grab any advancement or encounter from that location. So the AI has now moved into the 2nd row worth of ocean tiles, and when it moves into an unexplored tile, it's immediately going to reveal that tile, and the AI has found the Sea Hound Isle. Now this is actually giving itself some progress towards an achievement, and that's the Explorer achievement we talked about earlier on. Whenever a new ocean tile is explored or revealed, that particular player or AI is going to place a cube in the achievement area. So the AI is going to be doing this right now. So I placed a cube from the AI supply in the Explorer achievement area. Every time an ocean board is revealed or flipped over, and whether it's an island or just open sea, you're going to go to the corresponding row deck and place an advancement or encounter, whatever it is, at the very top of the deck in the watermarked area. You'll see the watermarked marked area for this one right here. And you can see the other ones that are already revealed from the beginning of the game have one. So we come over here to row number 2. We'll take the top card off and place it right here. The card found is an advancement card, and we know it's an advancement card based on the look of the card alone. If you take a look up here, you'll see an example of an encounter card. If you see something like the merchant ship on the top of the card, you know you found an encounter card. This one is straight up advancement. Will allow you, if I actually gain these cards in the future, to upgrade particular crew members that I have on my ship. However, the AI just likes to gobble these cards up to boost its abilities. And so this particular card lands on this particular grid section, and as you'll note, based on the AI card on screen, there is a yellow trim border for this particular spot, which means the AI will take that particular advancement right now. Advancements that are gained by the AI which have at least one cannon or at least one battle ability are placed in one pile called the pirate pile near the AI. So this one right here that we just gained for the AI has a cannon icon. So again, because it's the AI, it handles and uses these cards a little differently, actually quite a bit differently, than the players will actually use them. So this is called a pirate pile now. The other type of pile that can be formed near the AI is the merchant pile, and that's for everything else that isn't a cannon icon or a battle ability, and I'm sure we'll see a battle ability card in the future. Now, if we happen to actually land on a spot where the AI takes a merchant ship, which we remember we actually saw one of those at Trader's Rock, if it happens to take that one, then the AI will flip a coin, and if it's tails, the AI keeps the advance on the front side. If it's heads, the AI places a cube on the legendary achievement and keeps the advance on the back side. So as you can see on the AI card, we've now resolved everything that's sitting in that top row. There could be something potentially on the right-hand side, but we don't have anything when we pull this card during turns 1 through 3. So this card has now been resolved for the AI, and the AI's turn is complete. At the end of the AI's turn, ensure that you repopulate any advancement or encounter spaces on the game board. A player turn consists of 2 phases, the main phase and the cleanup phase. In the main phase, this is where all the actions of your turn are going to happen. You're going to perform a number of different actions, including moving your ship, loading and unloading cargo, playing cards and using abilities, and buying advancements or resolving encounters. Then you'll move to the cleanup phase after you've done all your actions, and it's time to sleeve your new advancements you've gained, draw new cards, reset the board, ready for the next player's turn. But in this case, moving to the AI's turn, and then optionally, you can raise your pirate flag if you so choose. Now, I mentioned that during the main phase, which is what we're moving into right now, you can actually perform as many actions listed as you want, and they can be taken in any order with the exception of moving your ship, which requires you to set sails first, and that's something we'll talk about very soon. You may do these actions as many times as you want, unless they're otherwise noted that you cannot. So let's start by talking about the load, unload, rearrange cargo, and coins action. Now, just so that there's no confusion, our ship currently is in our harbor. And in our player area, we have a tile that represents that exact same harbor. And this is where you can more easily use resources like cargo, storing that stuff right in front of you versus actually on the harbor board if it's further away than being within easy reach. So it's a very handy tile to have in front of you. And we'll be using it mainly for this playthrough, especially so that you can still see what's going on between the harbor and my ship when it comes to loading, unloading, and rearranging cargo and coins. Now, just before I go ahead and show you an example of how you can load, unload, and rearrange, I want to go ahead and draw up my 4 cards to begin my turn. Now, normally you would do this draw up of 4 cards even before the AI has actually taken its turn. But again, just in the flow of showing you guys everything this game has to offer, we'll show this to you right now so you can see these 4 cards as I draw them. And then I'm going to actually take a couple actions on some of the cards to generate some resources that we can then use at the harbor to load onto our ship, and I can explain to you how that's going to impact things like movement, for example. So I've drawn my starting hand of 4 cards, and you have a hand limit of 6, and what that means is if I decided during this turn to only spend 2 of the cards and hold on to 2 of the other ones, I could carry them into the next turn, draw 4 cards, keeping the 2, and have a total hand maximum of 6, and have a really big turn set up for later on. This is going to be really handy later on when you're trying to gun for things in the future and planning for the future, especially when these particular crew members become a lot more useful as the game goes on. As you can see right now, the majority of the cards, in fact all of the cards I've pulled off the top of the deck, have the exact same availability in terms of what they can do for me, and that is generate cargo. At the very bottom of each of these cards, if I decide to actually play them, I can generate 1 cargo, and you can see an anchor symbol beside it. That anchor symbol also relates to the harbor, which is over here. So any cargo that I generate from the crew will be placed at the harbor. We all know that I'm currently docked at the harbor, so this leads me right into the loading and unloading. So what I'm going to do is, seeing as these basic 4 cards right off the top of the deck are all about just gaining cargo at the harbor, I'm going to spend all 4 of them. So I've gone ahead and taken my 4 cards which were in hand. I've now put them in play, and this is something that's very, very critical to ensure that you know what cards are in play, what cards are in your deck, and which cards are in your discard. So for this playthrough, the cards that are in play will always sit to the left of my deck. The deck is always face down, and I draw from this at the beginning of my turn, and then the discard will be on the right-hand side. So during your turn, you'll place cards from your hand, as I mentioned, down in play. One thing to note is that the icons that they give you, you can take advantage of right away, or you can wait till later on your turn to take advantage of them, or just not take advantage of them at all. It's up to you that way. But there's going to be strategic reasons why you play certain cards based on what you're planning on doing during your turn. It's very nice to know, though, you have the freedom to play cards and not have to actually use a particular icon in that exact moment. But it can set up some pretty awesome things later on. So I've gone ahead and I put these all in play, and I have gone ahead and triggered every single icon across the bottom of the cards, which really spends all 4 of them because there's nothing else on them to use, and it generated 4 cargo in the harbor. So as I mentioned, I wanted to talk about loading cargo onto the ship and unloading, and there's a lot going on with that as it relates to setting your sails. Now that we have some cargo in our harbor, let's talk about loading cargo. So anytime your ship is on a harbor board, it's considered in the harbor, and you can move cargo from your dock tile onto available hull spaces noted on your ship. Easily find those by finding this type of icon on the ship. You can see this states 4, and then it has barrels and or coins in this particular slot, or up here we have 3 barrels or coins can be placed up there. And again, ship upgrades are going to allow for more options that way in the future as you make your ship stronger and stronger. Now, if your ship is at an island you control, and we'll talk about islands that you can control later on, you can move cargo and coins from the island onto available hull spaces on your ship as well. You cannot unload from an island you do not control. So as of right now, I want to load this cargo onto my ship, so I'm simply going to go ahead and grab all 4 of them, and I'm going to place them in this front section because, as I mentioned earlier, you can have up to 4 cargo or coins in this slot right here. So when can you unload? Well, you can freely unload on your turn as well, so long as you're at your harbor or at an island you control. You can take cargo from your ship or coins from your ship and drop them off at your harbor or drop them off at an island. You can even unload on an island that you do not control. Now let's talk about rearranging cargo as well as getting rid of cargo off of your ship. You can rearrange your cargo or coins however you want on your ship at any time. You just can't do it during battles. You can also jettison your cargo or coins into the sea, remove them from your ship, and return them to the general supply. You may even do this when it's not your turn. It could be useful in situations where you're trying to generate a lot of movement because the cargo that's sitting in a particular space can actually hinder how many sail icons you have when you determine whether you want to set your sails, which is a big important action that you can only do once on your turn. So I'm quite happy now that we've got some cargo on our ship. The next thing that I want to do is really get moving. And how do you get moving? Well, we actually just touched on it. It's all about setting your sails. And that is an action in and of itself that you can, as I mentioned, do only once on your turn. So what do you have to look for in order to determine the amount of movement you'll have with your ship? Simply take a look at your ship and count up the number of sail icons that you see, as well as on any cards that you have in play that have a sail icon. Now, as you saw with my starting 4 cards, none of them had any icons that had any sails on them whatsoever. There could have been one or might be one in the future, and then I can count it. For right now, I only have 2 that are sitting on my ship. The next thing you do is you're going to go ahead and remove any of the sail icons from the equation where there is cargo or coins in those slots. So as you can see here, I've got cargo sitting in a sail slot. Because of that, I don't get to count the sail. Now, this is the normal way to determine how much movement that you actually get when you set your sails. However, there's an exception to this rule when you are in a harbor or at an island you control. If you're at a harbor or an island you control, it's being said generally that because you're freely able to unload and load at any time, you can essentially just do this. I'm going to choose to freely unload. I'm going to choose to now set my sail because I have no restrictions. I'll get the full 2, and then I'll just reload the cargo back on. So basically, without having to do all that, just note in your mind that anytime you're actually at a harbor or at an island you control, you're essentially juggling your cargo so you can make full use of the sails that you have. So now we need to determine where we want to move our ship, knowing that we have up to 2 movement points. And it's worth noting that the entire harbor board is considered to be adjacent to all 3 of the ocean boards in row number 1. So for instance, even though my harbor is in the far top right hand corner, I could go with 1 movement point to this ocean tile over here. Instead, what I'm going to choose to do, although I'm extremely tempted by the advancement card that's over here, and it states battle gain 1 crown, and those crowns are really, really useful for winning battles. They're one of the major focuses to try and get when you're actually doing a battle, which you'll see later on. But I also want to try and compete for that exploration achievement that the AI is already starting to run away with. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to head to Trader's Rock with 1 movement, and while I'm there, I'm going to find a merchant ship. So I spend 1 movement point on my ship's board off camera, so I'm down to just 1 more after this. And yes, you can break up your movement, and something else regarding movement, you can't move diagonal. Everything has to be orthogonal movement. Again, the harbor board is adjacent to everything on row 1, so what I just did with this movement was a legal 1 move. So we've moved to Trader's Rock, and now that we're here, there is a merchant ship in this location. We have arrived at Trader's Rock, and there is a merchant ship in the area that we can interact with if we want to. And you can see in the top right hand corner of that card that it states a 3 with a cargo and a slash through that cargo, meaning we'd have to spend 3 cargo. And where would we spend it from? There's an icon to the right of that cargo that is a ship, a black ship. That is our own ship. We cannot spend cargo from our harbor to interact with this merchant ship. That's essentially what that's stating to us. We would then just go ahead and hand them over some cargo, and they would give us this advancement, which means we would gain an advancement that we can then at the end of our turn sleeve onto one of our current cards that have been placed in play during this current turn. So that's pretty useful, especially when this one would generate in the future on a card 1 cargo at a harbor, and also allow the ability for that individual to place an influence cube on an island. As you can see, we're at Trader's Rock. This is the first time we've landed at an island. So I'm going to talk really quickly at a high level about what you're seeing around the island in terms of the tracks. So on the far right hand side in gray, That is the permanent influence track, and basically when you gain control of the island for the first time, you place a permanent cube in that particular slot. That also is going to help you towards gaining one of the achievements that we talked about earlier. You need to get 6 permanent cubes in order to gain that achievement. The next track to the left of it is really the major track that you need to focus on when you're trying to gain influence in that particular location. The one with the shadowed in or watermarked areas with the flag and the cubes inside the flag, this is where you'll actually place your influence cubes. So long as you have enough influence cubes that are more than the blank spaces that are available at Trader's Rock. So currently you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blank flags with cubes. Eventually, if I get 3 in here, I have 3 to the 2 that are blank, which means at that point I have control of Trader's Rock. I'll gain the benefit of being able to unload and load my cargo, which means I can move quicker from out of the gates on a turn. It also gives me a permanent cube inside of that gray track that I was talking about. And it opens up the ability to start building buildings, which are listed down below here, that can help us out in various different ways. And I won't really get into that until we actually start building the buildings. So hopefully that's a good enough overview of what you can do at these particular islands. So it's my turn. We've got a merchant ship here. The other thing we can do with a merchant ship, besides just going ahead and taking it for the lovely advancement that's right on the front of the card, is you'll see there's a symbol underneath of the 3 barrels or 3 cargo that's slashed through. And this is a battle, and it states to flip this thing over. So if I want to, I can go into combat against this ship. I'm not really ready for combat, and on my actual ship I have 1 cannon icon, which means I'd be rolling, or I'd be putting 1 cube into the battle board, which is not exactly really all that great. And my guess is that this merchant ship, which we don't know until we flip over, could have 2, 3, 4 cubes going in there. It could put some big time damage on me, and I'm just not ready for that yet. I'd rather actually do some trading with them. So I'm going to go ahead for one of my actions here, and I'm going to interact with the merchant ship. I'm going to spend 3 cargo from my ship, as it mentions right on the card itself, to actually take this advancement. And this advancement will sit in my player area until the end of the turn, when we can then actually go ahead and put it on one of our cards. So the advancement that I just purchased from the merchant ship is now placed near my played cards for the current turn. We'll talk more about this during the cleanup phase. So my turn is coming to an end. I only have 1 more movement left to spend. All my cards have been played, all the icons have been resolved on them. I haven't fully gone over everything in terms of what can happen at Trader's Rock, especially around the buildings or production that can potentially happen there, and really more about the controlling of the island itself. But don't worry, as the gameplay opens up, I'll talk more about that and you'll see it in action. So now I'm going to use my last movement point. I'm going to move from the 1 position on my shipboard to 0, so I'm spending all of my movement. And remember, you can't carry movement from my current turn to my next turn, so you might as well use what you can unless you really need to stay still. And I'm going to move my ship from where it currently is to this location right here. It seems that I found some open sea and not an island as I was hoping for, but that's okay, because even in the open sea you can still find advancements. So what I'm going to go ahead now and do is populate the watermarked area right here with a card. Remember, you don't populate areas during your turn that you've gone ahead and gained until the cleanup phase later on. Now we're talking. This is an amazing card and was complete and utter fluke. I got a card here that is only a cost of 1, and that is literally all that I have on my ship. And even better, the ability on the card states battle, drop 2 cubes. So in other words, it's essentially like having 2 free cannon icons available. Of course, this particular advancement would have to be placed on a card, and that card would have to be in play during the battle, but that's a huge bonus, and that could really make me, or at least turn me, into a more aggressive player earlier on. So let's go ahead and spend the 1 cargo from my ship and go ahead and gain this advancement. So just like the other advancement that I purchased from the merchant ship, it's now sitting sideways in my player area to be used during the cleanup phase. It's also important to note that the maximum amount of encounters or advancements that you can actually go through on a turn is 2. So I've done the most I can possibly do. A pretty efficient starting turn. And one thing I really don't want to forget about is the fact that I went ahead and revealed an ocean tile, so that gets me 1 cube on top of the Explorer achievement. And just like that, the race to get the Explorer achievement is now tied. I'm done the main phase, so now we're going to move to the cleanup phase of my turn, where I'm now going to go ahead and repopulate the game board with advancements and or encounters, depending on what comes out of the boxes. The 2 advancements that were pulled, this one in the open sea area that I'm currently in, has a cannon icon, which is good for battles, and then beside it states, if this card has at least 3 cannons, deal a damage to all enemy ships within 1 space. Wow. That is huge. That could really compound quite nicely if you had a particular card that had multiple cannons slotted on it to that 3 level. That would be really awesome. Above here in Trader's Rock, the exact same battle ability that showed up over here is actually over here, but there's a big time difference. You'll notice on this particular card, there's a bar on the right-hand side and there's a black bar inside of a white area. There's 3 positions, top, middle, and bottom. And what that represents is where, when you slot this advancement into a particular crew member's card, that advancement ability or bonus will sit in terms of its position. And why that's really important is you'll notice the one I'm pointing at here for Trader's Rock and the one to the right of it, even though they're the exact same ability, they're in 2 different slots. Meaning you could literally have both of these abilities on the exact same character, making that character a powerhouse to bring into battle. At this point in the cleanup phase, you can decide whether you want to remain in mercantile mode or move to pirate mode. You'll see a pirate flag there in the top right hand corner. I can take that flag, slot it onto my pirate ship to let everyone know that I've moved into pirate mode. Basically, pirate mode allows you to do things like blockade islands. It also basically means you want to be aggressive, and if a particular enemy, or really anybody, happens to land in the same space at the end of their turn as you're in, a battle has to happen. So essentially, if you're in a really strong battle position and you really want to go after some achievements around successfully completing or going after battles or even sinking another person's ship, you might want to go into pirate mode so you can kind of up the chances of that happening. So there's a number of different aspects around pirate mode, but one thing to mention is that the AI doesn't use pirate mode. The only availability when playing solo is for yourself to make this decision. For me right now, I'm not feeling comfortable with going into pirate mode. There isn't much benefit for me at this point, so we'll skip past it. Next, we would lose any unspent sales that we have, but as you can see, I gained 2 sales on the track down below, and then I spent 2 sales, so nothing to be lost. Now we get to go ahead and sleeve the advancements that we gained during our turn. There's only a couple restrictions around this. You can only sleeve onto a card you played this turn. You can't sleeve onto a card in your hand. You cannot sleeve an advancement card such that it would cover or be covered by an advancement already on the card. Cards can have a maximum of 3 advancements on them: the top position, the middle position, and the bottom position. We talked about this just a few clips ago. It's allowed to sleeve multiple enhancements onto the same card at the same time. So in other words, I gained 2 enhancements during this last player turn. I could put them on the same character. But actually, I can't, because as you can see, both of these advancements at the very bottom are for the bottom position, and I can't place 2 of these on the same card. You also can't use the ability of an advancement you just sleeved on the same turn that you sleeved it. So in other words, if I go ahead and sleeve this card to the left on any one of these crew members, I can't then generate a cargo and an influence point. Something worth noting around sleeving advancements is that it is optional and you can choose to set it aside. However, at the end of the cleanup phase, you can only have a maximum of 1 set aside advancement advancement card, you have to sleeve the rest. So if I wanted to keep one of these cards set aside, I could, but I'd have to sleeve the other one. And I am kind of tempted to do this because I know I have a captain card in my deck and the captain can initiate battles. So having a captain that has the battle drop 2 cubes attached to him would actually be really, really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and decide to sleeve this merchant ship on the bosun. And then I'm going to take this card right here, and I'm actually going to choose not to sleeve it onto anything. I'm just going to set it aside for later. So just like that, the bosun has gotten a little bit more useful. Final step of the cleanup phase is discarding and drawing. So I've gone ahead and discarded all the cards that were in play to the right of my deck, and now I'm going to go ahead and draw up 4 cards. Let's see what we get. The Buccaneer, Crew, the Purser, and the Deckhand. So we're moving on to turn number 2. The AI gets to go first. We're going to go ahead and roll a die to determine what card is going to be selected in this prototype. 6 is the one that was selected, and I'll go ahead and set the turn to 2. So as you can see on screen, I've got the card up and we're looking at row 1 to 3 because we're on turn number 2. And the very first thing we're going to do is, again, you can go ahead and place, as I mentioned before, the ship in the orange position, which is its final resting space. And in this case, that means the AI is actually heading back to the harbor at the end. But first, I'm going to follow through the rest of the left-hand side of this card to show you what's happening in the meantime. So the ship is going to head to Trader's Rock. It has arrived at Trader's Rock, and the next thing it's going to do is it's going to take the advancement that's sitting there. So unfortunately, that's one of the ones I really wanted. So that advancement is now going to go into the same pirate pile as the other cannon advancement it gained earlier on. And the reason it goes into the pirate pile is, as I mentioned, if it's a battle ability, which has the keyword battle, or it has a cannon on the advancement, it then goes into the pirate pile. So 2 total cards in the pirate pile, as you can see. The next icon on the left-hand side of the card we're going to resolve is the one in the same position of the ship, which has a 2 and a pirate flag with a cube inside. The influence icon is what that is, and it means we'll be placing 2 influence markers from the AI's supply into the watermarked area there on the right-hand side of the island. And the good thing about this is that it didn't get 3, because as you can see, there are 5 potential positions there. In order to gain control of Trader's Rock, the AI needs 3 of those 5 spaces, and thankfully they're just 1 shy. So let's go ahead and place 2 cubes there. The 2 influence cubes have been placed on the track, and as I mentioned, thankfully not enough to control Trader's Rock. The next thing that's going to happen is now we can place the ship in its final resting position, as it denotes on the AI card. That's going to be the harbor. Now you might be wondering why the AI ship would actually head to the harbor. What's the benefit of that? Well, actually, it's quite interesting, because one of the major benefits is that when that ship goes into the harbor, it makes it even tougher to try and attack it. As you can see in the middle of the harbor board at the very bottom there where the anchor symbol is, there's a +4 black cubes. That means if I go into the harbor area and try to attack the AI ship, it's going to gain an advantage of 4 defensive black cubes to whatever else it has for its attack, which makes it very tough to take down. So you want to try and focus on taking it out when it's not docked in the harbor. And that bonus can also be taken by myself if I happen to be docked in the harbor and the actual AI is coming after me for a battle. We'll talk more about battles and how they're triggered later on, but essentially at a high level, if you happen to see a pirate flag inside the AI card of the row you're resolving, that means that the AI will try to attack you, just like if I happen to use the same symbol from one of my cards, for instance. Now that we've resolved the left-hand side of the AI card, let's resolve the right-hand side. You'll see in this particular row we have a gear icon. That icon is specific to production. So when you see this, the AI is going to gain coins and barrels, or coins and cargo, from the greatest coin producing island it controls. Thankfully, it doesn't actually control any coin producing islands at the moment, so we can luckily skip right past this. The AI's turn is now complete, so during the cleanup phase, we're going to go ahead and place new advancements onto the slots where they were taken from. So all of them should have cards ready to go for my upcoming turn. So jumping into my turn, I want to talk about the cards that I have in my hand currently, because it's going to be important in terms of what I try to do during this upcoming turn, strategy-wise. So what we have here in front of us, we have a purser card. We haven't talked about this one yet, but essentially if I use this card, put it into play, and decide to use the icon on it, I can, as it denotes by the icon here, go ahead and take one island that I control and I can produce on that island. Again, completely ignore what you're seeing over here on the far right hand bottom corners. They're just letting you know how this card can level up, and that's another aspect I'm going to show you in this turn. I'm going to actually keep the Buccaneer card, and I'm not going to actually go ahead and use it during this turn, so I'll keep it in my hand, because if you keep cards in your hand going over into the next turn, at the very end of your turn, you're able to level a card up from your hand. Couldn't do that last time because I spent all 4 of my cards. It actually worked out perfectly for me though, because I got to spend all of my cargo to gain advancements, so that worked out nicely. But we're going to aim to actually try and upgrade this card, which you can see has an influence icon on it, but could be upgraded to have 2 influence icons in the future. And I like that. If I can try to influence islands to my side of things, then I can gain control of them, and that can help me gain achievements. So what I'm going to do is put this off the side and say we're not going to spend this one whatsoever during the turn. So I'm left with these 3. I have the ability to produce, but I have to control the island. So this one's kind of one that I could potentially hold on to as a second card in my hand to go up to my 6 card limit for the next turn, which I think I'm going to do. So the only 2 cards that I'm thinking I'll probably end up using this turn, again, not knowing where I'll end up based on exploring unknown terrain, but using an influence somewhere is likely to happen if we find an island, of course, and gaining a cargo at the harbor is certainly something we can do. So I'll go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to actually use is I'm going to use the crew card, and that's going to allow me to go ahead and place 1 cargo at the harbor. So to make things easy, I'm just going to place the cargo on the harbor tile that I have right in front of me, so I can easily move that back and forth between my ship. So that is now done. The card has been played and all icons on it have been spent. Again, I didn't have to spend the icons right away, but I wanted to. And what we're going to do now is probably focus on getting some movement going, because I'm currently sitting in an open sea space, and the only thing that's there is something I could purchase advancement-wise for 3 barrels, but I don't have 3 barrels on my ship. So we probably just want to move and explore a little bit more. So taking a look at my ship right now, I currently have 2 sails available, so I'm going to go ahead and set sail, which means I can now move my marker from 0 to 2, allowing me to do some movement. Well, I'm kind of thinking of going to the left here, maybe over to this ocean tile and exploring it. So let's go ahead and we'll move our ship to this location. And we have discovered Fire Island, and as it states underneath the title of the island, it says while you control the island, your hand limit is increased by 1. So in order to control the island, as I've talked about before, as long as we have more than half, so 1, 2, and 3, as soon as we put the 3rd one down in that track, we now have control, and we get to put a permanent cube in this track to the right as well, and that's going to help us with some achievements. Plus we get that hand limit increase for this one. So this is a great one to have found. The next thing we do after we reveal that tile is we want to make sure to knock our movement down by 1. So I'm going to do that on my shipboard right now, moving it from 2 to 1. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to populate the open space right here, because we explored this new ocean board with an advancement. It appears we found a merchant ship outside of Fire Island. So again, as I talked about before, we could choose to spend the 1 cargo on our ship, which we actually currently don't have, so we can't do that. Or we could battle the merchant ship, and you know, it might be kind of fun to do that, but remember, it is risky, especially at the beginning of the game when I only have 1 cannon. I'm only rolling essentially 1 cube right now. I don't have any cards in hand to boost myself during battle just yet, but I'm working towards that. So I'll probably avoid going after the merchant ship right now. But one thing I'm going to do is going to take a look at my hand of cards here, and I'm quite happy right now to put this card into play, the deck hand, which is going to give me 1 influence, and I can go ahead and place it on Fire Island. And this really is a good island to go after for control, because it really doesn't take that much to control it. We just need to get the 3 cubes. It's actually probably one of the lowest requirements for controlling an island that I've seen in the prototype so far. So that's a good one to get, and get ourselves a permanent cube on it as well. So we're on our way towards that. Now I have 1 more movement to spend, and I also have, of course, the purser and the buccaneer, which I'm not planning on spending. So I think actually, the only other thing I could do, and the one thing I also don't want to forget about too, guys, and this will happen sometimes, is your achievement tracking. So every time you explore into a new area, you're going to want to remember to go ahead on the achievement track and put a cube there. So I'm going to do that before I forget. So now I have 2 cubes on that spot. Again, I need 5 to gain the achievement. So you know what? With the extra move that I have, I'm kind of tempted to actually move again and explore another location. So let's do exactly that. We'll spend our last movement point in order to explore south of us here, towards us. And we're going to go ahead down from Fire Island into this space. All right, so never mind about my comment earlier about seeing the lowest requirement island available. This one is probably the lowest requirement one. It only has 3, which means you only need to have 2 influence here in order to control it. So now I'm actually deeply regretting placing the influence marker in Fire Island. Again, you can see that there's choices to be made, and sometimes it's better not to spend your icons or player cards until you are sure of where you want to place them. So exploring stuff like this is going to open up other options. So the first thing we need to remember to do is definitely add another cube to the achievement track and also add an advancement to this Spire Island. We now have 3 total cubes on that Explorer achievement compared to the 1 from the AI. Now this is a really good advancement because it's cheap. It only costs 2 cargo from our ship. It's a row 3 advancement, and as you can see, it's got 2 icons here on the left. We haven't talked about this one just yet, but basically think of it as a modifier. Typically what will happen is you will get abilities throughout the game that will state, based on the number of those symbols that you find of those icons, you can essentially multiply the results. So really it's a modifier. It doesn't have anything inherently on its own, but in combination with a really good ability, it can bump itself up to become something really powerful. And of course, cannons all have to do with battle. So let's talk about the building icons that are underneath of the island. If you have control of the island, you can go ahead, as long as you have the ability to build, which you can use somebody like the First Mate, a card which we haven't seen yet, but when it comes through my hand, does eventually, when it's leveled up, allow you the ability to build buildings. So as soon as I've got 2 influence cubes here, and I've got control of the island, which means a permanent cube would go in here because of that first time control, then I can go ahead with my First Mate, as long as it's level 2 or above, and I can start trying to build buildings here. And as I do, at the end of the game, if I have buildings in these places, they'll give me 1 coin each for end game score. Now, just having control at the end of the game is not enough. It's all about having the most cubes present between this particular column and this one total up as well. If you have the most cubes, you'll gain 3 coins in end game scoring. If there happens to be a tie for first place, then you simply move down the list here and both players get 2. If you're tied at second place, then both players will get 1, and if there's a tie at third place, nobody gets anything. Let's talk a little bit more about the buildings and how they can be used to your advantage when playing solo. So first off, you have to have control of the island to be able to build a building. Plus, you have to have the actual card in hand, which is usually the First Mate, unless you've gotten advancement cards that allow you to do builds through special abilities or icons. But from the get-go, the only individual in your hand that can actually get to a point of building is the First Mate, and it needs to be at a level of 2. So once you find that card, comes around to your hand, and you spend it, you also have to ensure that you're in control of a particular island. So in this case, for the Spire, you need to ensure that you have 2 of the 3 spaces with your influence, and as soon as you do this, you now gain control, which means you can place a permanent cube in the permanent cube track, and there you go. Now you have full control of the Spire, and that's been resolved. You go ahead now and build a building with the First Mate, and you could choose which building you'd like to build. So let's say you choose to build the fort. If you decide to build the fort, the benefit that comes along with it is defense. So if the AI happens to come into this space and tries to place at least 2 influence markers, the fort is there to defend you, and it will trigger a battle. And when it does, it's going to give you 5 black cubes up against that AI ship, which is really nice. The other type of building you can build here is called a garrison, and it has two advantages. One is it will give you the same type of benefits as the fort, except less black cubes on its own. It will only give you 2, but if you have the fort built and the garrison, like I have right here, you actually get to put them together and total them up for a total of 7 black cubes, which is pretty deadly. The other thing that it does, as you'll note by the ball of flames there on the icon, is the AI will take auto damage from garrisons only if it ends its turn on the island or gets into a battle with the garrison. So it's not just going to take damage just for the sake of it, and the AI will never take a 5th damage this way, and the 5th damage is what it takes to sink a ship. So there's no way to game the game and have the actual garrison take down the ship on the final hit. The outpost is the last type of building that you can create on an island you control, and this one will just boost your production, because when you normally produce on an island, you're going to take a look at this area right here and you get 1 gold in this case. But if you have an outpost created as well, you're going to gain an additional cargo and an additional gold. So with a better high-level understanding of how buildings can benefit you when you have control of an island and you build them, we're going to actually end the player phase right now, because I've done everything I want to do. I've actually expended all of my movement with my ship, and even though I technically have 2 cards in my hand, and one of which I could still use right now, the Buccaneer has the influence symbol on it. I could use this to place an influence at the spire, but I do want to hold on to this because I want to upgrade it during the cleanup phase to show you guys how you can level up cards that are still in your hand at the end of your turn or your main phase. So now we're moving into the cleanup phase. The first thing we do is put advancements into any slots that were taken away. We didn't buy any or gain any, so we can move right past that. Next, we sleeve any advancements we have. You'll wonder where this one came from. Remember the first turn of the game? This one was a carryover, and I'm going to do the exact same thing this turn as well. I'm waiting for the captain to show up in my deck so I can place this ability on a card that makes sense to gain it from, so I know whenever I trigger a battle, I'm always going to get those 2 cubes. So just to sum up where we're at in the cleanup phase, we had nothing to refill advancement and encounter wise. We're choosing not to go into pirate mode at this point because I'm not trying to trigger any battles. I don't think I'm in a good place for that, or to defend any islands in the first place. We have to lose any unspent sales or movement we have, but we used all of our movements, so we skip past that. We can choose to sleeve advancements, but as I mentioned, I'm going to actually hold off on doing that and carry the advancement forward into the next turn, hoping to find my captain to place it on, which will be a much better pairing for battles. And the next thing we do is discard and draw. So what we're simply going to do is take this deckhand here and the crew card, which I played and were in play. They go to my discard pile. I have 2 cards in hand right now, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw up 4 cards. So the first one off the top is the first mate. Look at that. This is one we talked about in terms of building buildings at level 2. So I'll show you how leveling works once we're done the cleanup phase here. Next card is a deckhand. Next card after that is a crew. And then finally, the captain, of course. The cleanup phase for my turn is now complete, and there's one thing I want to make mention of that I didn't do at the end of my very first player turn, and that is leveling. This is a really cool mechanic within Dead Reckoning, so let's go over this right now, and I'll retroactively correct one of the cards from my first turn. So how this works is from the end of your cleanup phase, basically the end of your turn, till the start of your next turn, so essentially during the enemy's turn or during the AI's turn, you are going to be able to upgrade one of your cards in hand. So I can literally look at the cards that I currently have in hand for this past turn that I just had, and I can decide which one, based on the icons I'm seeing here on the bottom right hand corner, I really want based on my strategy that I have for the upcoming turn. So you can see here, if I go ahead with my captain and I decide to go ahead and upgrade him, I can make myself available to be able to do or push battles. And you have to have that pirate symbol to be able to do that. So I'm tempted to go this route. I could also go ahead and upgrade the Buccaneer, for instance. And simply to do so, you just go ahead and you're going to take the card inside the sleeve that has level 1, and you're going to rotate it 180 and slide it in. And the level 2 icons will show up below. Once you get from level 2 to level 3, you flip the card over, and 3 and 4 on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to actually have the captain level up, because I really like the idea of being able to push battles when I want to, especially if I want to at some point go ahead and sleeve this card on the captain. So just like that, the The captain now has these two ability icons on his card, and I'm retroactively going to do it for the first turn where I missed out. Sadly, I'm not going to be able to take advantage of the icon I would have gained after that first player turn, which would have been nice, but I can go ahead now and choose from either these two cards, which came from that prior turn, or the top two cards I have in the discard pile. So really, I'm going to go ahead and boost my Buccaneer from level 1 to level 2 so I can have more influence. So just to avoid any confusion, we've gone through 2 full turns, and so at the end of each of those 2 turns, you can go ahead and upgrade a card, but only one typically, unless you make a mistake like I did and missed it in the first turn. But guaranteed going forward, I won't be forgetting about leveling up cards in hand. And that's going to wrap up the overview and part 1 of our playthrough in solo mode of Dead Reckoning. There's still things we have not seen happen just yet. I'm aiming to show you the battle mode in the next video, so really excited. Hope you'll join me on board as we continue the playthrough. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.